AEW is interested in a WWE merger. Plus, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon have opposed the company's sale, and we have updates on Saudi Arabia and other potential WWE buyers. It's all in the wrestling news right now. The name on the contract says Khan.
Which one, Tom?
Yeah, the name reads Tony Khan. All right, we have spent the week in this bubble of hyperbole and over-exaggeration, and you know what? Let's end the week with it.
Yeah.
AEW buying WWE.
What? Are you crazy?
Well, Barron's, which is the sister publication to the Wall Street Journal, which is a subsidiary of Dow Jones and Company, they have reported in the last few hours that AEW's Zahid and Tony Khan have shown interest in buying WWE. It says, whilst the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund appears to be the most likely to buy the company, the Khan family is in the pool of potential buyers for WWE. This is according to a source close to the situation. Adding to that, as well as a story from the sister publication of the Wall Street Journal, CNBC has reported that their sources say that AEW's Tony Khan is interested in merging AEW with WWE. The Khans could partner, says CNBC, with a strategic media company to share the intellectual property while merging the wrestling leagues. This is somebody speaking anonymously with CNBC. They add, currently AEW hasn't had talks with Vince McMahon or Nick Khan, the company's chief executive, and McMahon may view selling it to the Khans as a non-starter, but it's out there in the world.
It's out there in the world, Tom. And in a week, as you were saying, that's just seemed to build on its craziness. This is another thing to add to the stew, and we will stir that pot contently.
As we do stir said pot. Now, obviously, when it comes to the Saudi Arabia potential buyout, they have got I think several authorities have said like they've got money for days. They've got faucets of billions of dollars.
Yes.
I think there's a few outlets that have said it in that way. I think it was on Front Office Sports on an interview there. So they, along with Comcast, who's another potential buyer, they've got billions and billions and billions. It's not the same case with the Khan family. Whilst they do have deep pockets, they're not as as the others.
Yeah.
So if there was a bidding war, I don't know how long it would last, but there's nothing to stop them from building a consortium of people that would go in with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to ask how you'd feel about it. How do you feel about it?
I mean, it sounds like... I've said this multiple times on the news and stuff before, but it does feel like when you've got all your toys. Imagine having all your toys and being able to have whatever match you would so desire to have. But at the same time, you know, we talk a lot about how AEW's roster feels a little bit stacked at the moment too. And
let's chuck in the
WWE roster as well, so, for good measure. So yeah, there would obviously have to be some sort of structure there, I think, if that was to happen. But I mean, from like a fan perspective, as someone who would love to see dream matches between people in AEW and people in WWE, like in that sense, it's exciting. But then also, like, sort of practically, how would it all sort of play out, I guess?
I'm going to be the better obscure company.
Yeah.
As hilarious as this is to talk about this morning after the week that we have had, I don't want this to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely do not want this to happen. This is not shade on AEW. This is not shade on WWE. I think both promotions are fantastic at what they do. Emphasis, I think they're both great in their own ways and do their own things really well. And the fact that they have separate entities is important for wrestling as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm a wrestling fan. I'm not an AEW fan exclusively. I'm not a WWE fan exclusively. I'm not an Impact fan exclusively, a New Japan fan exclusively. I'm a wrestling fan. And the best thing for wrestling is to have options.
Yeah.
We saw what happened when WWF bought WCW,
yes,
and all those options disappeared. It created this weird stagnation in the industry that took a long time to come back from. And such a deal that is in the ether today, due to multiple reports, it would do irreparable, at least not irreparable because the industry would always recover. It would do a lot of damage to wrestling if these companies were to come together. You gotta keep them separated.
Definitely. And as you were saying, it's always nice to have the options as well, isn't it? Like, if as you were saying, if you're a fan of wrestling and you don't have sort of other outlets, if you don't necessarily enjoy one thing from one show, you can always go to another. But then if like the two of the biggest ones then do merge together and then you're just like, it doesn't work for me anymore, then, you know, it sucks a little bit, doesn't it, for you as a wrestling fan? Dave
Meltzer adding that WWE are looking to sell the company by middle of 2023. So we reckon that whoever the company is going to belong to, it will be done and dusted via JP Morgan by SummerSlam.
Wow. That's not even that far away.
It's not even that far away. That time will fly round. So it's looking like this deal's going to move pretty quickly. And it's one that some major higher-ups in WWE were opposed to. Business news site Axios say sources close to them have said both Stephanie McMahon and Paul Triple H Levesque have been opposed to the company being sold, which it further breaks the heart when you see that Stephanie McMahon resigned from her posters. And as a result of this movement and this shaking in the company, that neither want the company to be sold.
Absolutely. I think like after the last few months that they've been in charge as well, and the change that we've seen, like for this all of a sudden to happen, for Vince to come back and sort of power his way back into the position, it is heartbreaking because Stephanie and Triple H have done a lot of good, I feel like, over the last couple of months that they've been.
They really have. From a fan watching perspective, they absolutely have. In terms of the product that we watch week to week, they certainly have done. The issue now is that even with them on the board, it doesn't really matter because Vince McMahon has majority shareholder control. George Barrios and Michelle Wilson are in his corner as well. So you don't really have many chips to bargain with when it comes to making those big decisions. If you go up against Vince McMahon, then it's like, well, I'm the majority shareholder. So that's my decision made. So I get why there would be an opposition to a lot of stuff that's happening now, and the fact that they don't want it being sold, it's really irrelevant because the majority shareholders are saying, well, this is happening. This is a thing that's going down. And in terms of the sale, there's been another big player in the market for this company this week, hasn't there?
Yeah, so Dave Meltzer reports on the WWE sale. He says Nick Khan was in Los Angeles and met with heavy hitters Bob Iger, who's the Disney CEO, and Jimmy Pitaro, chairman of ESPN and Sports Content. So I guess those names will ring some bells.
They do.
Now, Disney has a net worth of $182 billion, so $7 billion, the predicted asking price for WWE, would just be a drop in the ocean for them. The past few years, they've been buying up major IPs. Obviously, we've seen Star Wars and Marvel, as well as purchasing companies like 21st Century Fox as well. All this led to them entering the streaming market with Disney Plus, which is now the second biggest streaming service in the world with over 150 million users.
It seems like a potential. Now, WWE also has a little bit of business with Disney anyway. I mean, wrestling in general has a bit of a potted history with Disney. I'll talk about this more. You know, I mentioned about a video that I did where we break down all the people that are buying WWE potentially. That deal is back. That video is back.
It's back.
Out of the mothballs.
Wow.
It's been re-recorded.
I didn't even get to do a Lost Wrestling Media.
I mean, you could technically do a Lost Media on the pilot one, which is
that's true.
The first draft of the video, which is edited and will never see the light of day. It's like Batgirl. We talked about when we've talked about this, like we talk about this a bit more in the video itself. Obviously, WWE and Disney currently have a partnership in the Philippines randomly.
Oh yeah, of course. I forgot about this.
I think, and from what I've gleaned from looking into it, I think many thought this would be like the WWE network being moved wholesale onto Disney Plus. I think it's been a few documentaries and other presentations, so nothing major in that regard, but certainly a deal with Disney Plus outside of an American market, which is a start for something. Saw a really interesting tweet by Chan Man, who just put this out there, and I thought it's a good school for thought, where he says WWE selling to Disney might not be so bad. Wrestling themed stuff at Disney theme parks, a physical Hall of Fame at a theme park.
That'd be great.
A huge budget for pay-per-views and to acquire big name talent again. more opportunities for wrestlers to cross over to movies and shows.
And we see that quite a lot recently as well. You know, I think there's a WWE show going out on Netflix soon that's got Rey Mysterio on it as well, and there is definitely it definitely feels like the products that they put out do sort of cater towards the Disney side of things, like the family sort of movie side of things, and some of the promotion materials and some of the like the merchandising they put out and everything certainly feels sort of within line of something that Disney might sort of put out into the world.
Absolutely, it does. What about Saudi Arabia, though, Andrew? We can't end a video talking about WWE style without talking about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
What? Well, the rumor come out, Tom. Does Vince McMahon is Saudi Arabia? Well, actually, it's not that. Meltzer continues about the Saudi Arabia thing. Meltzer continues, Saudi Arabia is in the hunt. There is definitely smoke to the Saudi Arabia story, but it's too early for a deal to be finalized. Dave says that if WWE wanted to take the company private, their best bet would be a deal with Saudi Arabia, as the rest of the suitors are publicly traded companies.
So they are still very much in the mix, and I'm not surprised that they're still one of the forerunners for potentially buying the company.
Yeah.
Again, if by the main one of the big differences between taking a company public and taking a company private, if it's private, you can kind of do what you like.
Yeah.
And you haven't got to sort of assuage public shareholders and public interest. You haven't got to worry about how you're positioned on the stock market anymore. You can just do what you like. So that is certainly an appeasing proposition for WWE should they go with a Saudi Arabia investment.
Especially Vincent Kennedy McMahon as well.
Especially Vincent Kennedy McMahon. More wrestling news throughout the day at the end of this wild week of wrestling. And you'll get it first at cultaholic.com. Keys!
Love you, bye.